It's all my fault. It's all my fault, right? Just blame it on me.
Start again then.
Yeah, you can fucking go. Everybody's already heard the ship going down. Everybody knows we're like barely floating. We're waiting for the Coast Guard to come in.
Biggest recession in 300 years. Here, have a cargo ship blocking the biggest trade route in the world. Yum, yum, yum.
That is a spicy
Something with another subscription.
Just like clockwork, like Antrax. Thank you, mate.
I like how Anraxon was waiting for us to fix the audio first, so you guys can't get this online. I ain't doing this.
Right.
Okay.
Let's go back to pretending this never happened, as we always do. So, Dark, I think you want to start.
Oh wait, we're live? Like did you guys know? When at this point did it start working? Because there was some stuff that you said
a while ago.
Next year's room. All
right, start again.
Replay the intro, Razor. We gotta do this the right way. All right, we'll act like it just happened. We'll edit it.
We'll edit it live on stream. Go for it.
All right, guys, we are back after a long hiatus and with some little technical difficulties, but we'll forget about it. With just starting it off the bat, I am introducing us. It is me, Dark Leftovers, the most humble orc and war boss of the 82nd, joined here by our fearless leader, Razor.
Hey guys, what's up?
Beautiful. And
oh no, we lost you again.
It's like now the technical difficulties to Dark.
oh, this sucks.
Yeah, the war boss has been.
I'm going to assume it was me.
Yes,
Go to Callahan Brothers.
This is one of the funniest intros ever.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, dude, my freaking push to talk is definitely running off its life, or that all the
unpopular opinion. Change it. Put it on another button.
Oh wow.
I cannot adapt. Anyways, special guest, Kat.
Hello, everybody.
We'll just get that out of the way and let's go on to the agenda.
Indeed. There's much to talk about.
Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and move from the introductions because that was already too painful. Let's not sit on it anymore.
Indeed.
Let's go to the current war update, which is like a tradition at this point on the stream.
Indeed. Well, I've heard in chat that we've just crossed the fishing line, and the colonial heretics have finally surrendered their false state to the Warden Empire, as is tradition.
Wasn't there a letter from the baths at one point we got to address?
Yes. That filth.
I think that's last word territory, but
no, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about it anymore. No, I mean, I definitely think we can let Avitus address that maybe later in the day or even now. But keeping on topic with the current war, which has ended like apparently a few minutes ago, basically like 5 minutes ago. Yeah, that was a very interesting war, if I can say so. With
I mean, well, I think the mistake, like I was mentioning this yesterday, that I think we learned our lesson from last war, because last war it was we took a lot of ground early on, and we were consistently gaining ground, but it was very, very slow, and then it ground to a halt, and then we would just basically the colonials held us off for a long, long time during that war, and then all of a sudden they had those mass production tanks and they just rushed through our regions, annihilating everything in their wake, sort of thing, and then the 2 nukes, blah blah blah. But I think not allowing them to get to that stage this time is what the true tactic that I think has helped us win the war earlier than last time, basically denying them that tank span that basically won them the war last time.
Has a faction ever lost MPF and not lost the war in a couple days?
I don't think that's a case. Like MPFs are sort of like game breaking for a faction. And I don't, in some measure, it might not even be the production capacity, but the morale blow of just losing a third of your mass production capacity in this case. That's like, because like we all know, the fighters are gonna, the people that prefer fighting on the front line are gonna probably go until the last bell most of the time. But like the important part of the team that quits and decides wars is the logistical team, right? When the logistical team stops believing, then it sort of starts crumbling down, because suddenly, and this is not even about not having the supplies, because supplies get stockpiled, right? You might have the supplies in the stockpile, but if the logistics team is not working on delivering those supplies where they are needed and so on and so forth, then you are like 100% done for. You won't survive that. And MPF means you're losing one of your main logi hubs. Thanks, David.
So I think in the past there has been instances where, for instance, the Wardens have pushed the Colonials back, and they're pretty much in their backline regions, and the Colonials have snuck a nuke in to one of our MPFs, or it's happened the other way around a couple of times. I think MPFs have been lost, but in certain, only in very rare circumstances, does it not affect the team that they've lost. For instance, if the team that is on the defensive, they've already lost an MPF and they're suffering, but then they manage to get a nuke off or something like that. That's the only time I can think of where an MPF's been lost and a team's actually won before. That's certainly happened a couple of times.
I think we lost factories before, but I don't think MPFs have been around all that long. And I just can't remember a war where, like, once the MPF was lost, the other side didn't get rolled. I mean, I'd be curious to see that, but that's off topic, I guess.
I don't think we have an official statistic on it, but generally speaking, like Avita said, if it's a nuke, maybe, because nukes are a bit different.
Sure.
MPFs are mass production facilities, by the way, for the guys that don't know what we tend to use a lot of acronyms and stuff, so we should explain from time to time.
Lingo.
Yeah, and they seem to be really important when the enemy loses the town altogether to a push. Nukes are a bit different, they're a morale mechanic, but in the end it depends on what you hit. You might be able to, like Avita said, to lose an MPF to a nuke and still soldier through, but I'm not sure if that happened, right? I think more important than actually the losing of the MPF is how that happened, right? And how did the Wardens get to the door of Silk Farms, right? Which in big measure is to the immense French wave that has that has flooded the Warden faction with very big contribution from 11th, right? The Warden, long time Warden clan here, right? They have been instrumental in attracting these big communities of French players to the Warden faction by having a very civil and proper relationships with, because like most of the people that play, the French people that play, have been following streamers in the game, right? That's how the game became very popular in France, right? And what happened there was when the initial streamers started taking an interest into Foxhole, the 11th was there on point, going and talking to them, volunteering to help out with like showing them around, or like volunteering to help with whatever they needed, like logistical wise and so on and so forth. And this is a very good example of how to basically interact with people that are new to the game, which is a shame not everybody does, right? And I don't want to make this I don't want to make this about factions, but I do know we received a lot of reports where new people were complaining about how they were treated on one side or the other. Well, we heard mainly about the ones on the colonial side, because normally, they probably heard on some on our side, right? But I think that
there was probably thousands and thousands of instances, and I'm sure that some of them were good and some of them were bad. It's just, I know, like, for a certain fact, in our starting area, we had constant trainings going all the time, training people about what to do, and it wasn't just from our clan, it's from individuals that have just been playing the game for a while. It was really, really good to see the community so willing to teach new people how to play the game. And as for the French wave, I think the French people are quite unique when they look at Foxhole, because you see anybody else looking at Foxhole, they see, the Americans and the Germans, but they will see that the wardens are actually modelled after French World War One soldiers. Their uniform resembles those soldiers the most. So I think that's what a lot of people from France would probably be drawn to, because that isn't represented in video games a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. One point I want to put a bit of attention on, and a lot of people feel like they might have missed. I saw a lot of situations where somebody would, because especially in volumes like this of players, you're going to have a troll, you're going to have a griefer, you're going to have somebody that just wants to ruin everybody's fun, right? And with the removal of all in-game moderation from a moderation team, and like only relying on the team, moderating itself and opening up tickets with Clapfoot. What a lot of people have noticed is, like, there's even a video of a guy just like telling a streamer about his exploits, right? How he drove like trucks in the ocean, how he gave new people that were on artillery coordinates to their own bases, and they're basically making these new people just shield their own bases and stuff like that. And after this was published, there were people that came forward and said, "Oh yeah, I've reported that guy. Yes, I've made a ticket about that guy, and this guy was still in the game, still enjoying his time trolling people and ruining their time, right?" So I know, and I probably assume that there was a lot of pressure on the dev team, especially on the part of scalability and whatnot, but like totally mismanaging the report system like that, and not handling those tickets, and basically like leaving these people to just grief again and again. Because another thing that's very important and people don't realize is, even if you find a griefer, if you don't have enough friendly people to kick him out, it's very hard to convince the entire people on the server, especially if they're new, that this guy is a troublemaker, right? And if those guys are louder than you, because that happens, right? They're just simply louder and more obnoxious than you. They might actually turn that around and say, no, this guy is actually the griefer. And there were cases where even people from our clan were almost kicked because like griefers would just like turn against them and just like vote them out and convince people to vote them out, right? So I think that's a thing that is really undermanaged, right? The moderation side.
Foxhole more than most games is especially vulnerable to griefers. So if the community is not tough and it doesn't have the tools to combat it, the game's going to suffer in the long run. For the longest time, while Foxhole's been a mediocre populated game, the community's been able to deal with griefers very, very harshly and very, very quickly, because we're so, there's certain names that you get to know that play the game a lot, and the people that fuck around a lot get kicked a lot. But now that there's thousands and thousands of people playing the game, some of them not giving a fuck really about whether they get kicked off or not, because they know they can get back in an hour later. These types of things where they're giving new players coordinates to like friendly bases and stuff like that. I mean, that's quite unique. That's like quite advanced levels of griefing. That's probably the most advanced level of griefing I've ever heard of on Foxhole. And if they go into that level to fuck the game up for a side, it needs to be dealt with by the development team, and it needs to be dealt with swiftly and harshly, because if they don't make an example of these people, then it's just going to attract more and more and more, and before long, you end up like Rust.
Yeah, well, the last thing I'll say before I'll let you guys in and say whatever you want before we move on is, overall, at least from the Warden point of view, this was a really good war for everybody. Everybody put a lot of work in. There was a lot of collaboration and a lot of like work put, especially on that assault on the east side, and taking all of that ground, maintaining it. It's not an easy feat. And then on the west side, we also had a lot of clans with us. We had CL there. We had another thing I want to shout out. We had a lot of new clans and a lot of small clans that have worked really, really hard. And one thing I need to stress, and I personally really liked, I've encountered a lot of new clans that were really willing to put aside that, stigma, that, oh, this is the old clans, right? Like they're arrogant and shit, like, we can't work with them. They're like, it's like, no, like, of course you're gonna have people with more experience be like, hey dude, go do this, go do that, but like, it's not because we want to fucking order people. I always try to stress this, right? Because new people always perceive it like, perceive it like, this guy's like in here trying to get me to do whatever he fucking wants. I don't want to do that. I want to do whatever it's like not about that. A lot of old people are so focused on what needs to be doing in this game, because this is the thing, and I think this is the thing that it's really hard to understand for new players in this game. This game leaves very little room for error, right? Like, think about the vehicles, think about artillery, think about all the moving parts in it. Aside from infantry, but even there, right? There's no room for error. If you fucking push the vehicle 3 meters forward and there's a fucking, garrison house in range of you, you're done. Bye. Adios. There's no time to back up, and especially if we're talking early game and stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even pushing up with one of those little scout tanks was risky. You know what I mean? Because the amount of colonial infantry with AT weapons these days is ridiculous.
I will mention, kind of related to all this, just kind of talk about both last war and this war. The times that I have played, I will confess, I actually enjoyed myself, which has been not been the case, I have to say, with Foxhole and a lot of history. But the population is just so good for the game, and it really brings the game to life when you have a good high pop environment where all the fronts are active. You don't experience play PvE with a high pop war, and the fronts that you go on to, you've got large groups of infantry grinding on against large groups of infantry, and really fun battles when exchanges, a lot of guys fighting each other, and that's where Foxhole really comes to life. And so the high pop has carried, like we're going to talk, and I plan to address some of the things I still aren't good for the game. And I still think that a lot of the things in this update were overwhelmingly negative. I'm going to stand on my ground on that, but the population is making the game enjoyable in a big way.
And, I probably can use this as a segue and an add-on. I will assume the reason you had so much fun, Kaz, was there's something missing from the update they didn't deploy in this war because of technical issues, probably,
Probably. I mean, it definitely helped my enjoyment a little bit with this war, but even last war I had fun outside of one specific day that we'll talk about. It's but yeah, anyway, yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, I don't want to put too much time between your punish. Let's move right in.
Okay. Well, we'll just dive right in.
I was going to say,
we need to make sure that he has his bath bag by his chair.
Do you want me to open this one up, Razor? Or Dark, you want to take this one?
I just wanted to talk about the war that just ended. There was no rain or snow mechanic, right?
Yeah, that's why I sort of mentioned it as a sort of segue. I was just assuming that part of the reason why Kaz enjoyed it so much because they didn't actually turn up any of the weather, because probably the servers would have legit caught fire this time if they would have tried that with so many people on them, and there were already a lot of issues with FPS and the game just having teleporting people around, everything as shit. Imagine a fucking snowstorm in the middle. Jesus fucking Christ. I think already people lost some graphic cards Black Dutchy. Bless his soul. So I don't think we want more weather when the servers are so full.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if we could, give me a second to introduce this one. I really want to give Dark's time to talk about this mechanic, because Dark's perspective on this, at least from the operation that I'm thinking about, is actually quite funny. And I'd love for him to share a little bit about what he experienced. But for those of you that don't know, we actually gave it our best effort, and we did an operation in a tier 3 snowstorm last war. And just to see if we could make it work, there was an opportunity that availed itself to us where we could try something a little niche, a little unique. We went into the operation with like 80, 90 guys and said, listen, this in all probability is not going to work. And this operation could fall apart in 20 minutes. Like it was so jank that there was no confidence that was going to work at all. Good reason.
I just want to, because like I know not everybody understands what the tier 3 snowstorm means, so I'm just going to go briefly into it. So the way the weather works in the game right now, you're going to have this either a snowstorm or basically a thunderstorm with rain and whatnot in multiple maps or in a localized area of a map or whatever, right? And the way the storm works is it starts out as a tier 1, which means it's like basically light snow or light rain, and the effects are not that noticeable. There's a bit of encumbrance on the rain. There's a bit of movement reduction on the snow. Not anything crazy. You don't freeze to death unless you like sit outside of a fire source for like 8 minutes or something like that. Like it's really high the time. Thanks, Emma. And then as time progresses, it gets worse, and it goes to a tier 2. And then in the tier 2, shit actually starts to hurt, right? The timer of you dying is like only like somewhere around 6 minutes or something like that if you don't warm up. And visibility starts getting worse. And then when you finally get to the tier 3, things are a bit to the limit of absurd, where if you do not warm up, you're gone in like 2 minutes. Like I tried to pull out a full kit for a mechanized vehicle, like with all the gas mask and all the stuff you need. I died before I got to pull all of that out without taking heat from like going inside or something like that. That's how crazy it gets, right? And then the visibility basically through binos are useless. You cannot see anything anywhere. The visibility is fucking like done for. And then after like 5 days of this, it starts going back to a tier 2 and tier 1. And now I'm going back to you, Kaz, just like so everybody understands.
So in those awful conditions, we said, guys, we're going to do an op. Get ready for it. And we did an operation at a place called Lockheed, and some of you may know that. But with the frozen mechanic, one thing that is kind of neat, I have to give it credit, is the rivers freeze entirely, and you can run or drive across the rivers. And so we had this grand plan that we would set up a siege fob across the river from Lockheed, across the river from the town that we were assaulting, and then we would ferry people back and forth across the ice in trucks with their respawns. And we're doing this with like 80 guys, right? And so we had this like whole operation of literally guys driving trucks and buses across the ice to ferry infantry back. Yeah. And so the guys that were driving had the best time of anybody in the operation. Let me just be very clear of that. We actually found a path in the ice where we could get up, right? And so there was a path that our guys could drive back and forth across the river and get our guys. But you're right, there are areas that you have to climb and do weird stuff. We even found spots that we could drive mechanized vehicles off the ice onto the land, which was really cool. We kind of found that out mid-operation, but we did a lot of work with it. But bottom line, I want to give credit to our guys for the attempt, because what I expected to be a 20-minute meme turned into a 2 to 3 hour absolute slog of pain and misery for our guys instead, because our guys, for all of the pain they were going through, really wanted to make it work and really gave it their best. But it really emphasized how scuffed the mechanic really is. And I don't want to say that the operation is unachievable or that it's impossible to operate in that environment, because we took some lessons learned that yes, we probably could, if we were more precise, a little bit better, have maybe been successful in that operation, taking our objective, because we ended up taking literally half of the island doing that. And that's why I think people got a lot of enthusiasm, is we managed to actually take some objectives through these unbelievable conditions, with the Colonials having a tremendous advantage over us, and it just forced our guys to try to fight harder for it, because, it looked like we were making ground. But nevertheless, bottom line from my perspective is it wasn't fun. At the end of the day, some of our guys enjoyed the aesthetics of it, enjoyed the optics of it for a time, but you can only freeze to death so many times and it be enjoyable. You can only interact with some of the mechanics that are really not working well in that system and say that this is fun. Moving slowly, freezing to death, having to build fires and fuel fires that die to being blown on. Any of these conditions just make it really unenjoyable to play. Yes, you can do it, and you could probably make it work, and you probably strategically apply it, but it's not fun, and it's unilaterally unenjoyable for everybody. I don't imagine the Colonials that we were fighting against had any more joy out of fighting in those conditions than we did, even though they had the advantage. And Artie was actually quite hilarious as well. We actually tried to bring Artie in during the operation, and Dark's got a great story to tell from his perspective on this. I'd love for him to take a second and share as well, but it's pretty funny.
So artillery, for those who are not familiar with the whole update in general, artillery got a rework where it has a lot more range, but it has like an RNG spread around it, like fairly similar to how real life artillery works. So during any of these special weather storms, the inaccuracy increases like tenfold because they added wind direction in the game where you have to account. During a tier 3 snowstorm, the wind changes every second. It goes from north, south, wherever it pleases at any time. So there is no such thing as accurate artillery firing in when you're using artillery. So what I basically decided to do the whole time was, okay, well, we're just going to be targeting the general location of the town hall. Hopefully it hits. We can't see anything. Binos does not work. You could only see 10 feet in front of you. So we're just sitting back and just, okay. And we have this good conga line of shell runners coming back and forth. And every time we will try to build a bonfire, some random logi truck would break it. So I think there was a point where a lot of our bonfires were destroyed all simultaneously, and I guess no one got around to building them. And we're firing the guns, and then suddenly I'm like, what the hell? What? Hey guys, why did the gun stop firing? I look at the road. There's just like my shell runners on the ground, buried with snow, with shells on the ground, and I'm like, oh, they froze to death.
I love that story.
And like everyone was like
frozen solid in the middle of the road.
It was funny as hell seeing that. I mean, everyone in the channel was absolutely laughing because of that, because it was dead silent with me just, asking why did we stop shelling, but no one had the heart to say that we died from the.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they made campfires able to be ran over by vehicles. That's like super annoying.
Well, I mean, I think people were concerned about roadblocks, but then just to make them buildable on the road.
Yeah.
But that's
the thing is, though, like from the position of the arty guns to where they had to pick up the shells, the distance was so long where if they were to go in point A to point B, going from point A back to point A, they would die in the middle of the road if they have that path to.
I think what needs to happen is I do get what they're coming. Basically what they're saying is tier 3 snowstorm, you shouldn't be attacking anything. You should be sitting in your trenches, waiting for it to pass or not doing anything on that front. That's basically what they're saying with
for days.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that's what they're saying. Yeah.
So
I think if they're going to keep it the way that it is, and I hope they aren't, but if they do, then there needs to be a victory condition or something like that. One of the little achievement things that you get, victory condition things like taking a town.
You mean a participation trophy?
Yeah, participation trophy. One of them, like taking a tier 3 town during a tier 3 snowstorm or something, because that shit is like super fucking hard. I watched the most of it from my heated cab on my truck, but
I think to your point though, I don't think I'll open my mind. It's not bad if it doesn't like if the worst part of the storm, like the tier 3 version of it, were to last like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, then maybe it would be okay for that intensity of blow through and really disrupt an active front. But again, we're in a high population environment. You can't afford for one of your conflict zones to just die off because people don't want to play in it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you've got a mechanic that makes your players not want to play the game, reassess the mechanic, because I think you can look at those fronts and nobody was doing anything.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was like what Stranger said. It's like it was aesthetically pleasing to attack during a tier 3 snowstorm, and just to say that you've been through that slog and actually had got that experience under your belt of actually attempting to do that what we attempted to do. It's not. I think I said this at the office meeting afterwards as well. It's not something that you want to be doing as a choice, but if you are forced to do it, then we at least now know that it's possible and under very strained attack.
Mm-hmm. But to make sure that there's no mistake, like when the op was over, our guys were so frustrated with how annoying it was to play. Like I'll take Fancy's phrase because it's catchy. He says, "If it's snowing, I ain't going." Like a lot of our guys are just like, "I'm never doing this again. It's not happening. I don't care. You execute me, get me from the cloud. I don't care.
He will go where I tell him to go. The heretic.
Just execute me. I don't care. I don't want to live no more."
So this is like my biggest issue with this. I personally don't understand it for the life of me. If we have a day-night cycle in the game, right, and I know it might be short because it's just like in total 1 hour or whatever, but why are you making the weather events relative to in real life time rather than in-game time? Because if they would be relevant to in-game time, like you said, okay, maybe you don't want them as short as like only 1 day, but like realistically, a snowstorm is not gonna fucking last for like a month. You know what I mean? We're talking about in game right now, right? So realistically, it should finish after, I don't know, let's say 5 hours, or at least the worst part of it, right? Like make the worst part of it 5 hours, 6 hours, right? And then you can whatever with the tier 2 and tier 1, which is playable, I would say. Especially tier 1 is like whatever, you know, like nobody is really bothered by that. It just looks nice, like people said.
So what if they did something like bring out an item that allowed you to survive, like a trench coat or something like that? So, you know, if your fob gets supplied with trench coats, you can put on a trench coat, takes up, you know, a bit of weight capacity, but it will basically stop you from ultimately freezing to death.
That's probably the plan, because even the visuals on the update screen had this like codes or whatever. But there's already a thing. Like you've already made I1 and the entire logic crew fucking boo you to the ground right now. Because what you just described it is just like them having to do two kinds of shirts, which is like they've already like foaming all of them right now because you suggested that, right? And it's like, you know, I know there's a lot of talk about this, you know, other people are like, and to a good point, right? It's like, why is the Warden the, you know, the mountain snowy faction if the Colonials get the same codes easily, right? It should be harder for them, and then they should have penalties in the snow and we should have penalties in the rain and shit like that. Which sounds cool, I'm not gonna lie, sounds pretty cool. Right, you see, like the discussion just complicates and complicates nonstop, and the people that are going to be the most pissed in all of this is going to be the Logi again, unless there's some process where you can just like convert normal shirts into, you know, like coat, you know, like winter coats or some shit like that. That doesn't fucking kill them, you know. Because like I already imagine, like, you know, the discussions. We need winter shirts. You brought normal shirts, you know, like just like, can you imagine, like, and the fucking debates at the factories about what sort of shirts we need to produce, and new timers. There's new timers. Yay! Now we have a timer for like, oh my god.
I mean, fortunately, they've already solved the problem. Like, I mean, I've really got to give the devs kudos. They just took it out of the game. That's good. Let's just leave it that way. just forget this ever happened. Move on.
That's the thing, you know. If we can all pretend that never happened, I think we would all be very happy. But I just have a bad feeling about it coming back. Not necessarily because they don't see the issues, but because always when they put time into something, they are gonna insist it needs to be in the game. Like it's not. Unless it's something we like battle tanks, then
I want to
take them.
Shout out and recognize something that Press Corps kind of put out there as a thought with, you know, liking the weather mechanic because it puts a cap on major offensive actions and, you know, forces people to break. And I think that's why it's there. I disagree that that's good for the game. Like, I think for people that are dedicated to the game, that enjoy the macro strategy of the war and how the factions interact and interplay with each other at a high level, I get that argument. But for the player experience, it's not a good thing. And that's where I'm coming to, is that the individual players that have to slow down, huddle up, and hunker down, the vast majority of people who engage with Foxhole don't engage with Foxhole to slow down, huddle up, and hunker down. Most of these people can't be bothered to take the extra 30 seconds to flank a front line, okay? Much less huddle.
You're not wrong.
You know what I'm saying?
He's not wrong,
Yeah.
man.
So like you're not making an enjoyable experience for your players. You got to reconcile that. Now you can try to force the players to like what you like, but I don't think that's a good idea.
I mean, you already put the work for the visuals. Keep the visuals. I think everybody loves the visuals. Keep the visuals. That's not gonna make
Absolutely.
anybody. You know, you can have a fucking like. There's a lot of games out there that have weather, but that doesn't mean you're gonna get fucked forever because there's weather in the game. It's just there for the mood, right? You don't need to do anything. You don't need a trench coat because it's raining. You don't need mud boots because you know there's a bit of soil around and shit like that. It's that just there as a flavor, right? And I think everybody, if they would say, right, we're keeping the weather, we're kicking out all the annoying encumbrance and visual impurities and dying because it's cold and your faction has yet to discover that putting more clothes on them or like clothes made out of wool or some shit gives them, always it's like, I've already talked about this. I'm going to mention it one more time. What kills me, actually fucking kills me with this game is we always go for comparing it to realism when it suits us, and we always step away from realism when it doesn't suit us, right? So, when we're going to be talking about vehicles or why some stuff is implemented the way it is, people are going to be like, well, it's accurate because like in World War II or in World War I, this happened, right? But when we're talking about stuff like we need to invent the bayonet because we don't know that a knife can be mounted on a rifle, or we need to, like in the past, we needed to invent like bandages and stuff like that because we didn't know a piece of cloth.
Really, really sorry for people trying to eat a steak. Back in Siva, like that must be really fucking hard with like a fork and a spoon.
So that's my grief with all of this, right? Like, it's realism as long as it suits us, right? The part where it's not realistic for soldiers to die in cold because they don't have, clothes for the cold. It's like, and mind you, the wardens have been living here for like fucking eons, right? So they're tough enough to
blizzard before.
They're tough enough to survive in here, but as soon as a blizzard comes up, half of the population just dies every winter, basically. And then they just like remake them during the summer. It's like, yeah, I don't know. This is just me. I know it might be a bit of
like my kind of empire.
Might be a bit of a salty old vet opinion, but that's just me.
We good on this one?
I'm pretty good, yeah. I've said my piece. I know if I have to start.
Yeah, that's nothing much.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think going forward, what you said about it, leave it in the game. Absolutely, just take out most of the mechanics for it. Maybe leave the slowdown for infantry in there, but take the fucking freezing mechanic out of the game. Get rid of it completely. But leave it aesthetically in the game. Definitely.
That's the dying part is the most oppressive one.
Agreed.
I was very delighted when we found common reason with the devs and they decided to take it out of the vehicles. Although cruising in the vehicles that are open top still, basically open top vehicles don't get to play, and nobody even brings them. There's no point. There's no way of even using them. So you're basically saying no to everything that's open top. I am still gonna stay by my guns. I know they're gonna stay by their guns, but I'm gonna still keep my position, and I expect to say I told you so at some point. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be honest with having to remove it because it's just oppressive.
Well, they've already come to that conclusion. They had to remove it because it was obvious it would not work for this war. Now, maybe that's just for server performance reasons, but I'm going to argue it's also for, can you imagine a front getting shut down reasons? Because
oh my god, no, I can't even see a possibility of running those like things we had last war, those Blizzard running it in this war, with the amount of queues and population trying to play the game and having them like already people like went through hell trying to take sick farms. Now imagine a tier 3 Blizzard. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think I do got one thing to say on the whole with.
Good.
What?
No, you're good now.
It started out. You're good now. Keep talking. Just don't let go. Don't let go.
Oh, oops.
Dark, you really need to do something about this, mate. We've lost you.
Give me like 2 seconds.
be a grown up and sit on your button.
Shush. So I have it off push to talk, so I can just have it. You can hear all the creaking and whatnot. This is a good example of having it. They had the uniforms to combat the weather. They just didn't have enough time. That was their excuse, I believe. They didn't have enough time to add them in. And this is a good example of why would you add something that only just pretty much ruins gameplay, and have the option to deal with it be we'll put that in later, and you get to deal with it the first and worst iteration of it. Enjoy the unique meta of this, and it's I don't know. It's like, well, who would do that? It's like, here you go. Here, take all these tools. Take this hammer. Take this plank. You're not gonna get any nails though. But can you board this up for me? All right, thank you.
It's more like we want you to really appreciate this mechanic when we bring it in. It's like, now that you've suffered, here's these wonderful tools. Now you'll really appreciate them. So it's like, clean the bathroom with a toothbrush, and then I'll give you proper tools later so you can appreciate them. I don't know.
Or our personal favorite. Here's a gas grenade. Do the other side have them? Well, yes. Do we have gas masks? No.
We have not unlocked the technology to make it. How did we make it? We don't know, but we'll get there.
Well, the only thing I'll add to this is, and I promise one day I'll be able to stay up for Zero Dark to ask Mark myself this, because like he doesn't want to respond until then, I guess. But I really want to like understand what's the reasoning against behind this. The same thing with the vehicles, right? Here, a faction, you can have this like Silverhand that, you know, is an assault tank and has 2 guns and everything like that. And then the Colonials, I think they got a ballista with the Silverhand, which was like nothing. Like the ballista was like the worst thing you can ever have against the Silverhand. And then, you know, you come down the line and it's like Colonials. Yes, you have this half truck that can fire mortars, and nothing in the game at the point where we're giving it to you can even remotely compare to it, right? And then the Warden's got like a pushable, I think, right? We had one of those wheelchairs.
The bomb around.
You know, like it was like, what the fuck's happening? Literally felt both factions were like with sticks and stones trying to throw shit at, you know, like
Don't
at
worry,
the
guys. Don't worry. Here's an 18th century spigot mortar.
Yeah, we are the Napoleonic faction though, and it fits. It fits the French theme, right? So, right. Are we good to move on to the next one? Because we have a lot of them. I'll take that as a yes. Right. This is a fun one. The infantry equipment asymmetry, which was the other big surprise in the update, right? Let's talk about the fun equipment coming in this one.
So do we want to start with, how do you want to tackle this, Razor? Do we want to just start with like comparing the standard issue rifles and then
let's go up from like rifles. That makes sense, right? Let's go up because there was an incident, right, in the first war where the Colonials needed emergency buff on their rifles, and I think that was fair enough. I think those rifles weren't like pointless as they made them to be, but they weren't balanced for what they needed to be either, right? Because it's the only gun you have. You can't make it a skill gun. It needs to be simple, straightforward. Anybody can use it. You can make some sort of really good gun, but only if you use it properly in these conditions, right? So
I personally don't think they should have fucked with the default weapons too much. They could have always added more weapons with different fire rates that took the same ammunition as some of the default weapons. But I don't think they should have fucked with them as much as they did. And with the Colonial rifle, I would say that yes, when it first came out, it was definitely like our rifle was far superior to theirs. But I think as the war went on, their rifle actually became more useful than it was at the start of the war. It's just at the very first day of the war, our rifle was just annihilating because we could just outrange them. And
they got more useful because they buffed it.
Power creep again.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the rapid, like, as the war progresses and things start transferring into urban combat and things like that a lot more, and close quarters trench fighting, their rifle was a lot superior to ours in medium to short range engagements. Ours was more superior in medium to long range. You know what I mean?
And
But that's where there's a good balance of it, though.
I just wanted to say that I think, with all things considered, I think the power creep was again evident, right? Like, it went from being really shit to, holy fuck, this thing has become really accurate overnight. That's just how it felt, and it might have a lot to do with what Avitus was saying. It might just felt like that because the engagements were closer, and a rifle that has better fire rate and better medium range capabilities is always going to feel better in that type of situation. But that's how I saw it. I don't think the intervention there was like just baby steps as you want to do something like this, right? It just went for like there was this wasn't balanced. We're just gonna make this thing really good, so everybody's happy, sort of a thing.
I tell you, Matt, like the colonial weapon that really blew me away, quite literally a few times actually, was was it their 3-shot carbine or something like that?
There is a burst rifle.
Yeah, that thing is ridiculous at medium range engagements and short range. And stuff
but it's a skill thing on it, because like I saw people make videos and like complaints on Reddit because it's trash, and they were like using it properly, like they had no clue how to properly use it. Right?
That thing is OP.
I know. You can just one shot people.
Because it's what it is. It's 3 7.92 rounds. So it takes 2 rifle rounds to down a player. Yeah, it takes 3 to kill them outright. You hit them with all 3, they automatically die. So like it's the only weapon in Foxhole that I've ever used where you can shoot somebody with it with the burst fire, and they go from like being full health, nothing wrong with them, to being a ragdoll, and they just flop down, and it's fucking amazing because you just ragdolling people left and right, and it looks great. I loved using it.
So that's one thing where, yes, a lot of the new equipment requires a lot of experience and time to adapt with it, and that's why we were talking about probably a couple of streams ago, where a lot of the wardens got to keep a lot of the old gear, so we were already accustomed to that. That was our advantage, while the colonials basically kind of got like a new arsenal that they have to just adjust and adapt with it. I'm assuming all the people that are complaining or having their issues with the burst rifle being like it's crap, but they're probably just firing at it from max distance while standing, while thinking like, well, why isn't this killing someone?
No, it's a trench pushing weapon, that.
But and that's the thing is though, is like they preach it out, and because I want to tackle the colonial starting rifle. It's supposed to be like a semi-automatic rifle, correct? Like it's not a bolt action rifle at all, right?
Yeah, I imagine it like a Enfield, is it?
But it has a firing rate of like if it was a bolt action rifle, though. It's like it's one of the things that's kind of mind boggling me is that I forgot who made this proposal, but when you're tackling on these unique weapons, buff them where they're strong at, and like keep to their weaknesses and keep to their strengths, rather than just trying to adjust something of it. Where I've always been opposed to, why don't you just give the colonials our carbine? Like I feel like that would have been a good if colonials actually had the carbine versus the bolt action rifle. Both have their similar pros and cons, but it's just more so like, I don't know, buddy. It's just I feel like when we go more, I can make my point a little more better. But
I mean, when it not to get too deep into it, when it comes to the rifle issue, my biggest issue at first, and it's better now, but my biggest issue at first is that the colonial rifle wasn't competing in the rifle slot. Right, the rifle slot is supposed to be your high accuracy, long range tool, and that a lot of the early game, as Avis pointed out, is kind of at longer range engagements on average. And so while you could make that carbine serviceable in certain contexts by trying to push and position better, on average, it's going to miss in the rifle v rifle engagement. And you're going to be at too much of a disadvantage, and you just don't have enough other options at your disposal. And to make it even worse, insult to injury, where it was good in my opinion, and it's better now, but I still don't favor the Colonial Rifle very much, even in its current state. I'd rather have an SMG over that Colonial Rifle. Like, it's trying to compete in the SMG slot for me, for what it's trying to do personally. But that's just me.
I think that's a good segue to just go into the SMG. You know, it's like there was a new SMG added called the pitch gun for the Colonials, and it's a high
Gosh,
fire.
that was embarrassing.
But that's the thing is though, it's a high fire rate secondary SMG gun, but there's a lot of controversy about it, you know, because Wardens still have our primary SMG, and the Colonials got a secondary one.
No, the problem is they're comparing it to the actual SMG, which is not. It's not you don't compare it to the actual SMG. It's not what it's meant to do. And
the pitch gun's only really good for taking out one soldier at a time. Like it's meant to be a medic weapon or a tank. I've tried to use it as my main secondary for certain things. Like I was doing like picking up bodies from the front and taking them back to a med station, and I took a pitch gun to do that with because it's lightweight and I could carry. And if I needed to take out a Colonial, it's good for killing one Colonial. It's not good for your main weapon though, because when you get surrounded by more than one enemy, you're going to get annihilated, because its main thing is its magazine capacity, and it's very weak at anything other than short range. So I think it's pretty. I like it, and I think it's pretty balanced, to tell you the truth. I don't mind it.
And like, people don't put the correct scenarios into play. What the pitch is meant for is like especially on the Colonial side, open top jeep, 3 people, pitch guns in the open top jeep, just fucking blast everything. Especially like if you're out for logi trucks and shit like that. Can you guys like even imagine how easy it is to like?
Ridiculous. Yeah. Silly.
That's the issue with all this asymmetrical stuff, is that you have these comparisons of, well, they're both SMGs and ours is just shitty. But it's like, again, don't view it as a primary. You have to view it within the realm of pistols and secondaries. Like that's pretty much it.
I still think our MP40 SMG is one of the best weapons on the game. That gun. I'd much prefer our I'd hate to have the pitch gun and not have our MP40.
And this is the issue I feel like I have, is, again, the Colonials are missing a slot there. Like, what do the Colonials have in the SMG slot? Their rifle, ? Like, because the pitch gun doesn't fit in that slot.
Yeah, and that's the other issue, is they are missing a primary SMG. Even though it's, again, like the pitch gun is good for what it does on where its strengths are, it's very good. But it's not denying is they are missing kind of a integral piece to their infantry kit, which is a fast firing short distance SMG gun, pretty much a primary.
And the early game one, for that matter, because that's the problem, right? It needs to be early on the tech tree.
I probably envisioned that they might get something more like a what was it called? Average, you might know what it is. It's the British SMG one.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I feel like they might get something like that. I think that would be
Sten. It was a Sten gun.
Because to me, it just makes sense to something more like, it would make sense. They would get like the Sten gun was like a mass-produced, easily made SMG. You know, I mean, it became stable.
Like it was a side-loading SMG, and it would. I agree with you. Definitely, that should be the Colonial SMG.
But my main point, like in brain, like, I wanted to talk about this topic pretty badly because because I've got this weird dichotomy going on in my head right now, because the game is more fun after the update than before the update, but I still think asymmetry for infantry was not great for the game. Infantry is more fun now because of player population, not because of the brilliance of asymmetry. Asymmetry has actively harmed the conditions in infantry, and my daughter's very upset about this. You can hear her in the background right now. She's very, very concerned about the state of infantry right now.
I would express it the same way as her, but I'm just trying to keep composure on this. But inside myself, I'm the same way. Trust me.
But that's what really kills me about this, though, is I'm enjoying playing. But one thing I will say that surprised me is in the AT space. And I know the ISGs, we can talk about the ISG here in a second, but because of the volume of infantry on the field and because of the Cutler, the role of like foxholes and rifle garrisons are actually less relevant than they were in previous conflicts. Like rifle garrisons, T2 rifle garrisons are easier to deal with because of things like the Cutler and high population. I think that's really interesting.
And I think a lot of the open concerns are right now are at a band-aid status until the high population fades away, and then we'll see the true, like we're going to be back to the issues we were still there.
Right.
So I know if we want to go on the ISG here because it's still relevant and it's probably ahead of
Yeah, I was literally just about to bring it up because
I'll make a prediction here as well. I don't think the colonials are aware, like yet, what the fuck they have access to, and it's like I think once they're gonna figure out exactly what the ISG is, I think without a nerf of sorts, there's gonna be real issues because like keeping it like strictly to what Kaz was saying with the rifle garrisons and the foxholes and stuff, like having 3 of these ISGs in the hands of people that know what to do with them is just like is gonna delete maps similar to how the mortar half truck would delete stuff back in the day, right? The ammo is cheap, the range on them it's 40 meters, the reload speed is insane. It takes more time to reload your rifle than it takes to fucking reload this thing, right? Like the animation for the rifle takes forever. You probably load 2 shells of this thing while you load your fucking rifle clip in, right? And it's like, you know, what's the downside? Not even like bringing the stuff in like with the, you know, if you damage it and they unpack it and they deploy it again, the damage goes away, right? So, so it's basically if the crew knows what to do, they're not even going to lose it to enemies shooting it and stuff like that, right? You can kill it, Crimson, but it takes some effort. And like I said,
effort, but that's the thing is like, and let's compare it to something that I like to view it, which you would think would be better, is the Warden wheelchair, the pushable 40 mil.
Oh,
and why
geez.
does that suck? And the ISG perform better? And I my initial thing is just fire rate on it. Fire rate is just too damn good. And that's just the main
that's
issue.
First. Then there's range, like, and this is a bit weird, if I may say so, how a tripod infantry gun has better range than a fucking full-blown cannon on wheels is like, what? If we're gonna go in the in real life part of the discussion again, in real life that cannon can shoot, you know, kilometers normally, right? Like,
right.
So,
I mean, we all know how much difference range makes. Like 5 meters is the difference between broken and useless.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very important point. Because, like, you know, you hear these like meat, especially when it comes to meter, right? You hear like 35, 45. It's like 10 meters. What the fuck is 10 meters? 10 meters is everything. 5 meters is everything. Like even 3 meters is a shit ton in this game, especially because of how restrictive it is. In your camera angle and viewing stuff around you, especially.
I will say, from my perspective, fighting against the ISG, like I've seen it, and I know that it's strong. Would you say that it's stronger than the mortar half truck was in its prime?
Well, it's the aspect of, you know, because the mortar half truck didn't need protection that much. It could just like do its thing with minimal effort. So the thing with the ISG and the reason why even for colonials, you know, we didn't see them using them at their full potential. Well, the same happened with the mortar half truck if you think about it. But it's, even if it's so OP, it still needs a dedicated crew. It still needs people to know what they're doing. I think even new people can operate them pretty efficiently. But I think the half truck was just easier overall because of the the safety aspect, right? Because you could stay
Mm-hmm.
65 meters behind even friendly shit and just like shill everything.
Yep. So, like in my experience, I found the ISG to be easier to deal with than more half track, frankly. And so, to that end, I'm grateful for that change in that situation. I do feel it's probably slightly overtuned, but not by much. Like I'm not as like up in arms against it as I would be like where the Mario half track was, at least based on my experience so far. Because I still feel like I've got game against it. I like if I still feel like I can influence that situation, even though it's strong as an infantry guy. Because the Mario half track, I felt in many respects quite helpless. I mean, there was just only so much that you could do, and it really required them to screw up royally for you to have game against it. And so for me, that's a net that's a really positive thing. But the other thing I'll mention real quick because this is worth mentioning, the imbalancing grenades right now, like our frag grenade compared to the colonial frag grenade, is absolutely retarded. Like at every
that was on the list.
Why that exists at all makes no sense to me. And I thought about that when we're thinking about the ISG, because our ability to contest the ISG is hindered by the fact that our grenade is not even playable. Like I would go as far as saying it's not playable unless you're using smokes.
No, the range is totally doesn't make any sense at all, especially for a throwable grenade, right? Like, and it's like I know they're gonna probably use the argument of the colonial grenade being smaller or slimmer or way less or whatever, but it's just like I don't know. I
don't care about the lore. I care about the balance.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I know a lot of people, because like if you ask colonials this, are like, but your grenades like can down people instantly, and it's like, yeah, so can yours.
Theirs can too.
Let's just put a little disclaimer here as well, because I feel this needs to be said. Lore and people who like it it only needs to go so far, right? Nobody in their right mind really gives a fuck if the colonials and the wardens have different types of frag grenade. You know what I mean? They don't need to be different in that much, for people to give a shit about it law wise. You know what I mean? The main thing about law is the story behind the factions themselves, and it's cool to have little bit of tidbits of like, this tank was made here by this certain guy in this faction, blah blah blah. That's all cool and shit, but like it stops becoming relevant to the lore, and it starts hindering gameplay on the level of the current frag grenades. I'm sorry, it doesn't really add up, even for people who like lore.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I think that for me personally, out of all this, the range differences, the thing that really kills everything. It's like, it's a fucking grenade. Can we just?
I mean, I'm not sure.
It has the best of both. It's the best of both worlds. It has long range and a massive AoE, and that's just like it.
Yeah.
And I think it has some collision issues too, because you throw that thing outside a bunker, and then everyone in the room just falls to the ground screaming that my leg. And
yeah. So what happens is if that thing gets thrown, basically at the window of a tier 2. Like bunker thing where like riflemen poking their rifles out and shit like that, it will literally clear the room from the firing slot, exploding next to the firing slot. Old frag grenades never used to do that, and I think they've really fucked up because, like when they've obviously got a longer range than our frag grenades, but they've also got a bigger area of explosion, and they seem to do a lot more fucking damage as well. In that area, I think it could have worked if they did something along the lines of, yes, the colonial grenade is it's got a further range, but it only has a very small explosive radius. But the warden grenade has a short range but a very large explosive radius, and I think that maybe could have worked, maybe in asymmetry if they really wanted to do it with grenades. I mean, but in reality, they shouldn't. If they were going to do it, they needed to add more. They thought, right, well, we want more frag grenades in the game. Yeah, that's fine. Just add the regular pineapple frag grenade and add this stick grenade as a default option for both factions. That's all great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then we both have access to them. That's fine. But making them asymmetry is ridiculous.
I was about to say, right? Because like, I hate to constantly go to real world, but I think it's applicable here. Because in real world, different countries have different guns, but on frag grenades, can we agree that everybody knew how to make the standard frag grenade, the one that just does the fragmentation grenade? Like, there was no one country that was like, how the fuck do those guys do? You know, like, well, what sort of technology is that? It's very foreign.
People think that the Germans used stick grenades all the way through the war, but they didn't. For a good portion of the war, they used regular, modeled grenades, sort of thing.
Yeah, like you said, like it's perfectly acceptable to say, right, this is the default grenade. Everybody knows how to make a fucking default grenade. But then, one faction has, put effort in researching this special type of grenades, and the other faction has went with this other special type of grenade or whatever, right? That sounds cool. Yeah. That's perfectly fine.
It just comes back to what we've been talking about the whole time with asymmetry in general, and we haven't even gotten it all mechanized, but it's going to be same issue. You're just missing slots. You're missing slots for pieces of equipment in really bizarre ways, either because it's so tuned out that it's might as well not be there, or it doesn't even exist to begin with.
But Kaz, they're going to be coming
soon.
And there are more to come too, and that's the even more scarier part. Is even though it's like, hey, they might fix that slot soon. But it's like,
what other slot's going to break?
Right now, power creep is the issue, and it seems like to be the only solution they know is to just power creep. This is a problem. Okay, well, this is going to compete with this, and this is going to be better than that. And it's like, okay, but what's going to be better than that then? In 10 months, we'll have another thing that'll beat that. And it's like, but just tweak it and fix it instead of just bringing something else or having another thing, it being the new top meta. And it just, I don't know. It's just, I feel like that's always been a big issue, is trying to stitch that middle spot where all grounds are good. Because I'm favor for just making all the throwables as like neutral,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
absolutely. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Definitely, 150%. All types of grenades and explosives should be universal across both factions.
I mean, I'm biased. I want everything universal. But
we don't. we don't want. Like I'm with you, Kaz, really. I mean, maybe different types of vehicles. We can talk about that, but as it comes down to infantry weapons, everything should be universal. But maybe different models, for both factions, that's fine. But they should have basically the same stats, in my opinion. Asymmetry for infantry really doesn't work. Asymmetry in grenades is just retarded. Like, I can't say it any other way. It's just stupid. Like, there should be no. No difference in the explosives department at all for either faction.
Currently, right now, we can make the ISG ammo. Like, think about it. We can make the enemy's munition for one of their equipment, but yet, I'm not saying we can't make their own grenades either. But you get me, like the line draws of the inconsistency where they pick and choose. Oh, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. That makes sense. That doesn't make sense. And it's just, it's always just, we would be talking for years about this, but I don't know.
Yeah, we need to keep the ball rolling. I want to say how much I love the cuddlers. I didn't get to use them a lot, but I think they're a great tool. I know
really good.
Infantry loves them so fucking much. They're so in love with them. And it's, that, because like, again, I hate it for people to think we're always focusing on the negative. So, that's clearly a positive, Early game does good damage against buildings and such. It gives over encumbrance. It takes reload time. It's a balanced tool, in my opinion. And I'm trying to be biased here, right? It's just the way I see it, like.
Let me just kind of weigh in on that a little bit, because I've been huge against the whole we can't damage buildings because we don't have the tool. Like not being able to shoot buildings is bad because we don't have the tools. The cutler's a respectable tool that allows infantry to engage defenses in a way that's, I think, fair. And we've lacked that for a while, because all we've had before is just smokes and HEs, because using the RPG against the defenses wasn't really viable. However the cutler is tuned, the cutler is better than the old RPG was for the role that it's designed to do. And so it's a really good tool, and I like it. a lot for what it's doing.
Something I like as well is the new light machine guns. Are there
The melon.
the ones?
That's
Those things are
another
busted.
one. I don't know.
Fucking
I feel like both the factions LMGs are very good. I feel like those are good staple weapons for the factions. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
but
happy that we got. Go.
in all honesty, like the Warden one feels over the top. I'm just being honest. Like I saw it in action.
Broken.
Shh, shh. Oh,
I'm just gonna be honest here. I'm sorry about this. It's just like it's like doing laser surgery.
It's mental how good that gun is.
the amount of fun I've had with that thing. Just like 125 rounds, and like it's accurate as fuck as well. Really,
Ratatatat.
It's silly. It's silly.
fucking MG42 vibes, like pure MG42 vibes. It's fucking
Oh, man.
awesome.
Yeah, it has been lots of fun. I didn't get to use it that much, but I've saw people using it,
And
and like
I mean, even though the Colonial one is only 75 rounds, it does seem a little bit more accurate than the Warden one. But I mean, not by much. You know what I mean? I mean, and it's decent for its role. They're pretty much the same gun. It's just ours has more mag capacity.
it's more thought of because you can use it in the trench and whatever. It's made to be this fucking weapon that you jump in defenses and you just like mow everybody down, and it performs incredible in that role.
It's super.
Mount the tripod on it. That'd be
I
awesome.
mean, I think it's the reason why it's so good overall is because you can deploy it so rapidly.
Mhm.
Like it's even better than the old HMG. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
You can-
absolutely. Yeah.
You can deploy this thing with an infantry section on the fly, and it's still good. So
But then HMG, you had to support and set up and
Yeah,
really make it successful. This thing, you just take anywhere, dude. Like, I mean, there are certain situations where it's obviously not ideal, but having one in the squad is never bad.
I think as far as because again, like I don't want to always keep the system that we don't want to talk about all our OP shit, but I feel like its deployment should be touched in the balance section because you can
Mhm, I
deploy this
agree.
thing relatively fast, and that is a big issue. Is you can turn, crouch, no problem.
It's too agile.
Magic.
I mean, that's the thing. It's way too agile for what it brings to the table.
inexperienced hands, I've seen this thing like annihilate thing. I think there was a video Shiv did
Yep.
a couple weeks ago that was just ridiculous, where he was using one of these things, and he was turning in a second, killing one colonial. The other colonial had like run behind a tree or something like that, trying to flank him while he's setting up again. It's like, no, he wasn't fast enough because he's just turned it around and blown his head off.
It was like the day after it was released. I watched Shiv take it on a bicycle in one of her night patrols, and he just sat with that bicycle and that LMG, and he had to have killed hundreds of people at night just with the same LMG and bicycle. Like it was stupid.
You turn the bicycle and set it up over the top of the bike, don't you?
Yeah. He's basically invulnerable.
Oh.
That's so dumb, dude.
Don't even get me started on the bicycle because like that thing is just silly, overall silly. In all manners, from it freezing so you can't use it to like
What?
yes, there's
No.
yes,
No.
yes, it freezes. So
You can't start the engine on it.
Yeah, no. I'll leave it for later anyway. if anything, we'll talk about later. Let's see. I guess we need to look at the RPGs more, especially on the huge discussion about bone saws being this, overall OP thing. I think some described it. I don't like, and a lot of people convinced that the one that you put on the tripod is like, it's just gonna fix all the tank problems. It's like, what? It's a fucking defensive thing of all things. Like, I don't know. I think I honestly, I think I might like the Colonial Venom a bit better, if I'm perfectly honest. Not even like mentioning the Ignifist, which is like extremely good, especially against light vehicles. I found really fucking effective because all you need is one track.
Really cool. Really cool that you've learned all these like names, dude. But I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
So the Ignifist is the Panzerfaust, basically.
All right.
One
Thank
shot
you.
portable.
Now I understand what you're talking about. Thank you. I'm never going to learn those names. It's stupid.
I've loved the gameplay from both being on the receiving end and on the giving end of the Ignifist. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those that's. I think it's perfect as it is. Like, I think it does good for what it is, and like that's pretty much it. You know, I feel like the Colonials need to do a better job of fucking getting used to this is a doctrine. Okay, get this rival, grab your Ignifist, and then go out.
Yeah,
Who's suggesting that it's underpowered?
I
mean, if anybody's suggesting it's underpowered, they need to seriously give their fucking heads a shake, because that is like that little disposable AT weapon is the best thing that the Colonials have, like, possibly one of the best things that the Colonials have ever got in regards to AT across the board ever.
Again, I think it's a thing of them not, not experimenting with them yet. They don't master the way to use it properly. I have yet to see like a squad of fucking 6 Colonials just showing up out of the dark and just like shooting you with 6 of them, because that's when shit goes crazy. You know?
It's because you got the scout tank. You'll see him coming now.
So like, what's the word? Like, het up on using sticky grenades, but I've never ever seen anybody use one of, like, right, take an Ignifist and a sticky grenade. Like, that combo is fucking insane. You know what I mean? So you disable your target with your volley of 4 or 5 Ignifists, then you go in for the kill with the stickies. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science, and I can't believe it hasn't been used more.
I think they have access to stickies, right?
Don't they?
They don't give a warden option.
What?
I'm not sure on this one. Hopefully Maybar can help us. I'm not
pretty
sure.
I think like they kept the wardens to have that one.
I've seen Colonials with stickies as well, like loads.
Yeah, but it's easy to obtain them from the enemy. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not gonna call it because I'm not 100% sure. They've done some. There's no consistency here, hence why you cannot be sure. Some stuff sort of remained for both factions. Some stuff is not. So it's, if anybody knows for sure which one is it, please help us out and tell us if Colonials have sticky still. Well, until then, the bone saws are the Piats, basically the ones that can fire over obstacles and stuff on the warden side.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting gun, and I think again even the wardens need more practice with using them properly, but I think they look and sound and feel like they're this thing that's just gonna like murder tanks, but they're really not. And probably why I say that, it's because I ended up using them mostly against the mass-produced tanks, right? The roaches, I like to call them cockroaches. And that thing has so much HP that it doesn't really give a fuck about your little bone saw. I feel like, because like they're almost certainly pretty powerful against LTDs, because they're open top and dropping one of those bombs inside can just decrew them and whatnot. So I think they're really powerful when it comes to lighter vehicles, but against the big boy tank, they become pretty useless unless they're spammed properly. And what I've also noticed is the encumbrance, especially when you pull them out and shit like that, it takes a lot of time. Like, the gunner has fucking loads of time to shoot you down with getting in position. Hell, I think the ATRs are better, to be honest, like time-wise to set up. That's and I didn't really get to use the Viper a lot. The Viper is basically like the colonial RPG specialized on vehicles, sort of a thing, right? But
Yeah, and
people tell me it's pretty good.
And I haven't had experience with much. I've only used the Cutler, frankly. I've not had much experience with the bonus. I've had them in my squad a couple of times, but I've not personally used it much.
So I don't know if we missed anything. This is like, at least in my opinion.
No, I think we've, in my opinion, I think we spent enough time on this one, and it's actually a decent segue to talk. I think your next topic is tank balance, right?
Yeah, and I think. Oh no, sorry, I fucked up. Actually, I put artillery in first. Because I thought, like, we had all of those testing and we had a lot of artillery ops, so it would be good to go. Also, after we did the testing and whatnot, the devs did a little workaround. They changed some stuff on them, apparently.
We may want to do tank balance real quick, because I think Dark had to step away for a sec, and then we may come back to this, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's not a big issue. We can talk tank balance real quick. I mean, I could just have a stream about this alone, probably.
Yeah, of course.
But
we hit the synopsis.
Yeah, I'll just stick to, because I've already had even a Reddit encounter on the topic, because I felt really
Reddit encounter.
Yeah, I know. I felt really triggered about some specific things, mainly on the exactly what Dark was referring to, right? The part where slots are missing, right? Slots are missing everywhere, especially in tank balance, and it's a fucking shit show. I'll call it as I see it. So the first line, I'll take it up from the from the scout tank, and I'll call that for the wardens, right? I think on the support vehicles, on the support vehicles sort of side, where and even here, like, there's nothing on the colonial side on that slot. You can't put the tankette there as people have been doing. No, like, fuck no.
Not the same role at all.
Not at all. It's a warden win because there's nothing on the other side. It's that simple. There's no contender on the colonial side on this role, right? And then as you go up, this is the case over and over again. The light tank side is probably the only exception, where both factions have light tanks, but one of the faction has the fast light tank, which, like, just blows everything out of the water, period. I know this might not be agreed upon by everybody, but I'm telling you, like, any day, put any light tank against the colonial fast land tank, and the fast light tank is bound to win, especially against the warden ones, which are fucking slow as fuck, and the turret rotation is shit. All you need to do is get that speed boy, get on his flank, and keep running circles around the turret. And the warden tank is not going to be able to even shoot you if you keep moving. I guarantee it to you, right? Again, this is a scenario where you're in an open space, and yes, absolutely, like, that's.
And this comes to the power creep issue as well, right? So even with the colonial light tank, I think being superior in slot to the warden light tank, and it's slightly superior, I think I'd say. It's superior enough to make a difference. It doesn't even belong on the field when the MPT show up. Like, the MPT is so good in every other dimension that warden light tank doesn't even have a place in the field because of how the balance works right now. Or that Collie light tank even.
I agree with you. Like, there's no reason to start building light tanks once you have the MPT, because, it's like I always like to say, if you compare it to a mobile or whatever, it's your tank. It's your actual tank. The thing the meat shield in front you put in to soak the enemy damage, right? And what do you know on the warden side? Well, nothing that can do that. I know a lot of people have tried to justify, oh yeah, but you guys have the silver tank and it can also do that. No, that's like how I like to call it. That's an assault tank. If you and if you permit me to use the mobile roles, that's your bruiser, right? That's the unit that can go in close and personal in the fight, uses all his skills, all his, like, damage and shit, but then he needs to go the fuck out of there because it's not gonna survive in a prolonged engagement to just, like, sit there and take shots, right? With the Silverhand, I can tell you, I know they buffed it a bit and we didn't see it in action, but even after the buff, I do not see that tank being able to sit there after it got shot like 2 or 3 times at most, especially after that initial armor is out. And the armor is like a dice roll, and people like to always forget it. It's a fucking dice roll, and you always roll the dice. It's never going to be as good as guaranteed HP, basically, in my opinion.
No, I couldn't agree more. The other thing that it's kind of comparing it back both ways. Once the Silverhand unlocks, where's the Warden light tanks?
Why would you ever build a light tank when you have access to Silverhands? Because
makes no sense, right?
Aside from the maneuverability thing, where the Warden tank is better, is a little bit easier to maneuver than the Silverhand, but that doesn't justify giving up the extra firepower, giving up the extra armor, and even the extra HP, and now even the extra chance to not get tracked, right? Because like the Silverhand's got a little buff. So why would you ever give that up? Why? Makes no fucking sense. Never in a million years. Again, the main issue here is the light tank in this game is not a light tank. A light tank is supposed to be fast, it's supposed to be maneuverable, it's supposed to be agile, right? Way agile than the assault tank like the Silverhand, right? So that's the point. Why would you want it? Because it's way faster, it's way agile, it's almost towards a scout vehicle, but with the addition of firepower, right? That can actually do stuff.
Exactly.
And then the Silverhand
exists to flank, right? Both those light tanks should exist to flank and hit vulnerable systems.
Yeah, and they should have the speed that allows them to go in and out without getting fucked, which they don't. Like they go on the flank, and especially when trying to back up and shit like that, they're not gonna get out of there alive. Never will, most of the time at least. Even if you think about like this, if you're going for the flank, why take the light tank and not the Silverhand? Because I believe it's faster. It's faster even backwards than the light tank. Why? Why not have the extra guns and everything, right?
So couldn't agree more. I just think it makes the point very clearly, though. Just that even that, and there's so many dimensions, right, in tank combat, and that's just one of them. But we talk about tank destroyer role.
Oh, like this is probably the worst one, honestly, because on one side you have the out of the tanks we discussed is probably the faster, aside from the light tank with the speed boost, but only when it uses the speed boost is faster than the tank destroyer, right? It's extremely fast, it's extremely maneuverable, which makes sense because the gun is fixed, right? So it needs to be maneuverable to like sort of compensate for that, right? The main downside of it having the engine in front doesn't really matter, because the chance of shattering the fuel compartment is pretty slim. As I saw it until now, it's not something that really happens all the time. And even then, a good crew is going to have enough fuel always to back up to safety, right? So it's not that big of a thing. The biggest weakness it has, of course, is being decrewed. And I've seen, like, and also you've seen, Gaz, you've seen our crews man like even 3 of those. How many did we lose to decrewing? Never. Because like if the crews are careful and they don't take unnecessary risks and they play it right, that's not going to be a real issue. If you're being reckless, you're going to get decrewed, of course.
And that's where you see kind of us and the Colonials put the combined arms, the combined strengths and weaknesses of the Silverhand and the tank destroyer together. They complement each other so well, but you have to steal them to get that complementary like structure. Like you wouldn't see us stealing and using those vehicles if we weren't missing the slots.
Yeah, and it's like the problem is what the extra range. I didn't even notice it. I didn't even mention it because everybody knows the LTD has that extra range, which is make or break. Right. And then we discussed the Warden 80 half truck, right? And the first thing that Colonials rushed to deliver against me is, why it's almost half the price. What are you expecting from half the price? And it's like, the price is not the issue here, right? I don't want the Warden half truck to perform just as good as the Colonial light tank destroyer. But what I do want it it to be at least usable in some way, which right now it's not. Because fair enough, the HP of it and the armor and all of those elements are trash, and most likely should remain trash. That's the downside of having a half truck do the role of a tank destroyer, right? That feels fair enough to me, the part where they're squishy, right? But the part where they're slower, like than everything else off-road, literally everything else can go run circles around them, makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. Like, the one thing that this half truck should be having going for it is agility. It should be acting like a puma, right? Just fucking sprinting around the battlefield, taking the shot, and just fucking getting the fuck out of there as fast as humanly possible. Why? Because it cannot take shots. You know what I mean? Like, that's the logic for me.
Yep.
Like, that's how you use it, right? It's good. It has extra range. It's fast, but it has one really huge downside. If it takes like 2 shots, it's gone. It's gone. You can't survive. You can't survive the enemy, basically, right? But right now, you know, I can attest to this, and I can bring video proof if needed. If you try and keep up with the tank formation using this half truck off-road, you're just gonna lose them. They need to constantly wait up for you, right? And even if they will wait up for you, once you get into engagement and the enemy LTDs get in range, you are not gonna pull back in time. Never will I be able to. And when the time comes to back up a bit, you're just gonna be left behind, and you're gonna die miserably, and you're not gonna achieve anything than losing shells.
Yeah.
And that's my TED talk. The only thing I want to add to all of that is the same question I have and will have until I get an answer to it. Why do we always get this stuff introduced without a counter on the other side? Why didn't the mass production tank come with some sort of a Churchill variety of the silver hand, if you will, right? So, because like I know the devs are with, like, you know, Chash using the same structure for tanks or whatever. We didn't need a totally new tank if they didn't want to do that. I don't think we needed a new tank per se, but what we do need, like a variance on the silver hand, right? And it's just like reinforced or some shit, similar to how they did with the battle tanks, right? And it's like, I don't know, fucking disable the ball gun if you want, or do whatever the fuck you want to.
Just, they get rid of the 16mm gun for the sake of more frontal armor. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like make it basically a Churchill infantry tank, right? Where it's there to soak up damage, and it's sort of shitty at everything else, right? Because that's the idea behind the Churchill. Just like, I'm just comparing it to company affairs. I'm gonna be honest, as I normally do, right? It just sits there. It's not great. Like, it's not gonna fucking win tank engagements for you, but it can fucking take damage and allow the other elements of your tank composition to shine, right?
The other thing that would be useful here, and I don't know, I don't think there's any world that this would
Thank you
happen.
for the follow, you non-essentials.
But you know, something that would help this space is, you know, an actual modular vehicle system where you had it like where you could manufacture a vehicle based on certain conditions where there are trade-offs. Like, you could trade off more armor for more firepower, or fire rate, or speed, or, you know, something. What I'm saying, like something that actually allowed you to modulate the vehicles as a player base. That would be insane. I don't even know what that would look like. But when I heard modular vehicles, that's what I thought was coming.
Oh, and I think
that would resolve this issue.
I think a lot of people have fallen to that trap, that fly trap, right? Everybody was like thinking they're gonna get like this little vehicle editor, you know how some games have, and then you're like just Lego parts around, which is like, oh, I'm gonna put this turret here, and then I'm gonna have this like engine module here, and you know, like, no, that doesn't, that they were not talking about that, sadly. And you know, I can live with that. I can understand how that's probably too much work or whatever, but what I will never understand is why not be consistent? why not keep to? Because like I know Mark said, he was asking, he confirmed that they thought out counters, right, for all of these vehicles, right? Why not add the counters in the same update and release them, together rather than separate in different patches? That will never make any sense to me.
Right.
I don't want to make an assumption on this, but it just seems like it's like giving the viewers more content instead of just blasting it all, not blasting it all in one shot, but you get me? It's like, stay tuned for next week and maybe you might see something. You get me?
No, like
we'll just give you this small plateau of, you take this small portion of stuff. Next 2 weeks, maybe we might have something else to show you. But I mean, I'm 100% with you. 100% with you. I'm just saying that I think that's what they might be trying to do.
no, but the problem with what you said there is like you're just showing us this small bit, right? In that small bit, add the two vehicles that counter each other rather than two random vehicles. That's what I'm saying. And if I can also offer a theory to why this is, I am almost convinced personally this is because, as they said multiple times, they work on stuff they find cool. Cool is an actual factor to what they put into the game, right? So instead of thinking it out and being like, we're adding this vehicle and we need to add a counter to this vehicle at the same time with this vehicle, they're just like, like, I really like this tank. And then Mark says, and I really like this tank. And they just like make these two tanks because they like them without taking any look at how they have no counter to each other or to anything else, rather. Which is mind-blowing to me personally.
Your connection's having a little bit of hiccups there, Razor, I think.
Oh, sorry. Did I break up or something?
You're going a little robotic, at least on our side.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if it's the internet or anything, because I didn't change anything, at least.
I think Dark may have adjusted the Discord server to try to help, but we'll see.
Yeah, we should be good.
Well, you guys seem fine to me, at least.
Yeah, there you go. I did my job.
Do we want to go back and touch on Artie?
I would love to, just at least a tiny bit, if you guys want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't mind. Iris, you awake?
I am here.
We actually didn't let Avitus say anything on the tanks, though. If you want to weigh in anything.
I mean, I don't really have a lot to say about tanks because I haven't really done a lot with them. The only tank that I've been in is the Scout tank, and it is by far the best vehicle to ever come out in Foxhole. Period.
Yeah, I know there are mixed opinions on it, but I want to emphasize how good that is as well. From like, and really for me, I know that it's got its combat capabilities are nice, but it's the freaking radio that does it.
It's exceptional in its role, and it can also be deployed to other roles to a fitting degree.
Yeah.
Yes, it's excellent as a tank escort. It's excellent as a mobile watchtower. It's excellent as a infantry support weapon. You can carry that anti-infantry weapon around with you relatively easily in one of those things. Its fuel capacity, amazing. It doesn't freeze in storms and stuff like that. That's obviously if the storm thing continues, then that's going to be invaluable in the future as well. It's just all round a fucking excellent vehicle. Obviously, it doesn't do too well against tanks, but I mean, it's not really for that role, And I just think that in its role, and even it's got roles later in the war. You know what I mean? This thing will be used from its inception right up until the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Even when battle tanks are around and stuff like that, you're still going to have a couple of these things in big tank formations guarding their flanks from sticky runners and infantry and stuff like that. So yeah, brilliant. Love it all around.
Yeah, it's a good example of what Kaz was saying earlier. A vehicle that is actually relevant after the point where other vehicles are released. This is what we're missing a lot of the time.
To me, it feels like it's a real proper light tank.
Right.
About that with the new Artie system.
Take us on this wonderful ride, Mr. Orc.
So we got there's been a lot of DACA been throwing out. And I mean, for better or for worse, overall, I mean, I've already said my piece when it first came out and before it was going to come out. I I don't ever want to go back. I think right now Artie is at a good 60% where it needs to be. There's a few touches that the devs need to really handle and tackle. It's almost there to being like, okay, you know what? Artie doesn't need to be touched ever again. You guys have all the systems in place for it. All you can do is just add on to the foundation. There's still, to me, there's still a few things and a few like a few categories they need to tweak a lot more, a lot of parameters. And like the first thing I'll talk about is the difference between the 120 millimeter shell and the 150. As far as logistical efforts are concerned, taking all that off the table, the 150 is just a general upgrade. That's all it is. It's nothing bigger or better. It's just an upgrade from the 120. And the cost it makes to make it is in reality, it's not that hard to make. It's like from talking to a lot of Logi people, me doing it myself, it is not a tax. The only biggest tax that artillery has is the strain of delivering shells. And with this low cost of production and the ease of production, it's fine. They don't mind that. But the fact that you have to drive back and forth, topping with the current queue system where it's a real hassle to really deal with. The delivery of shells is really staling a lot of artillery play. A lot of the UI can kind of be a little more refined a bit. I think there's a bit of issues when you're trying to pick up a shell and try to load it in, but that's besides the point. Firing a 120, if you want to do devastating effect, requires a lot of manpower. A lot of manpower. I think we've been trying the 120s in like six-man crews, and it's been totaling like about 18 guys. And out of those 18 guys, 6 of them are in the seat firing shells. Everyone else is dedicated on either doing a conga line of pulling shells and loading them to the gun, or submitting shell crates and throwing them into the nearest fob, then pulling them and then going. That there's a good gameplay loop in there. I've talked to a lot of the guys. They don't mind loading and throwing in the shells. I think that the main issue is just the transport of the whole like crate of shells. And it's just like if the 120 is not really, it's not really impactful. Like it doesn't really do that much damage, I'll be honest with you. It should at least have more quantity in the shells to not make them at least viable, but just to like, because right now it's like there's no point of making the 120s if you have the 150. Like there's literally no point of having it. Like you're better off just using the extra time to make the 150s and just forgetting the 120 ever existed. But I can expand further. But Razor, I know you've done a couple of Artie stuff. You want to give me I would like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, I have the more practical data, so to say, because I've been a bit more enthusiastic, probably more than Dark, to fuck around with the RT, because the reality of it, with the old RT, it was always a huge part of our operations, always, like to a point where we had a lot of operations that already revolved around RT and the RT gun, right? The entire 80 people DK operation would revolve around this gun. And the only mission that everybody would have would be to secure this fucking gun. As long as this gun was safe, everything would work out wonderful. You wouldn't need much, right? So I was very interested to see how the new guns change the meta. So I've used a lot of Warden Warden RT, but it's also important to say I've also used the Colonial one, including the 150 Colonial one, which we stolen, and we had free guns last war that we just used everywhere. And the bottom line for me personally is RT in the role that we knew it in the past is no more, right? You can't rely on RT anymore to get the job done. What you can rely on RT for is a good example is from the war that just ended. I know the French with War Navy and the clans on the west. They rained so much 120 millimeters on that bridgehead towards the Silk town hall that they just permanently destroyed all the garrison houses on that side. They just like ran thousands upon thousands upon thousands of shells until there was nothing left. But that was in a long engagement siege that took like what, a week, two, something like that. That they've been there for a long while, and they just fucking long term used RT for it like that. But for like same day sort of, right, we have an operation today and we want to take the town, RT is not the decisive faction anymore. RT is the suppressive aspect. It's area denial. It is what it is meant to be mostly, right? It is there to make sure that the enemy is not going to be able to mount a proper defense against your attack. And how well you coordinate your artillery fire with the rest of the elements you're attacking with is the new crucial aspect, right? Having key moments where RT stops firing and then you have a huge push on the enemy position, and then as soon, like the second your elements that were pushing got wiped, you restart the bombardment and you make sure you keep them pinned until you can send a new wave. That's what matters now, in my opinion. The better you are
at
that.
A really cool role. I think that's a really cool role for RT, and to Dark's point, I think it is superior to the way that things were in the past from like a gameplay perspective. This is one part of the update that actually looked really really promising, and I think that we've seen some of it and are still learning even now, from my perspective.
Yeah, I think
I still think they need shells though. They need smoke shells.
Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, especially smoke shells are one of the. I know the wardens are gonna receive those airburst shells, which sound really fucking cool. Like,
what you want is you want to be able to be like, right, fire 2 burst shells and then have a guy ready with a smoke shell. So I can say in my our infantry's in our trench and we're like, right, that's the first burst, that's the second burst, right? The next one coming in is going to be smoke, so everybody over the top. And as it lands, you're going over the top already. That is what I want the smoke for, to push enemy trenches and stuff like that, because that's something that we're really missing at the moment.
No,
and that's what this new the rework definitely favors different types of shell types, because back then when you just had everything like you could have 100 Howie shells in one gun, was just like, well, I couldn't swap into the smoke round unless I built another Howie gun, have that empty or have that already prepped with Howie shells. Here is like, okay, you know what? This box has our smoke rounds in it. You know what I mean? Like once it's ready, we'll swap them out and throw the smoke rounds in and fire, and it makes it just that much easier.
What I'm curious about with the artillery change, it's something that we actually haven't got in the game at the moment, but think about trying to fight a battle tank with no AT artillery in certain circumstances. That's going to be fucking hard. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
it's going to be hard.
One of the main ways that battle tanks were taken out back in the day was, AT field FA. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the battle tanks fit into this new meta.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're assuming the battle tank that's going to come in, the new one is going to be anything similar to the old one, which I think is not going to be the case, at least in my opinion. It's either going to be something way harder to make and I guess probably even harder to kill, or it's going to be something underwhelming. I don't think there's room for the reasonable medium option, so to say.
If I can add, Razor, in your experience, have you ever been hit when you're driving or using tanks with 150? To your knowledge.
Not that much, to be honest, but what I can tell you is, especially on the silver hands, I think we had some encounters, and it would basically just like exactly how the old howies worked. They would just like track you constantly with the absurd amount of precision. But to be honest, the silver hand would get tracked by literally anything. Like an ant would be on the road, you'd go over the ant. Oops, you're tracked.
So one thing, and again, like when I had my initial like arty rework post, there was a lot of core elements that needed to be put in order to make certain elements of the whole arty change viable. Because like I said, like they have the foundations for it ready and set. They just have a few tweaks they have to do. Like one of the tweaks being like the whole thing won't do that won't be effective if the issue of repairing was not addressed. You get me? If there's no like fixing or tweaking on how to repair while something's under fire, there's going to be a big issue, you know. And then we saw that a couple of times when the RD update first came out. Is the Amish was still strong. People were just still hammering away, and it was just like, you know, it would take 3 gun bombardments into making it be like, you know, crazily up to 6. And it's just like it's crazy when you think about it. You need 18 people to man and operate 6 guns for a consistent of 5 to 10 minutes worth of shelling to stop like 3 guys inside a relic base just hammering away. And it's just a big issue that we finally got an answer on one of their, I don't know if it was Zero Dark or their own stream, regarding the whole repair mechanic, and they're like, they like it as a feature, but I can't gripe and understand and chew it and be like, okay, you know what, I understand your point. Because if I was to tell you as a player, what would you rather do? There's something attacking your base. Would you rather pull materials and repair it, or grab some weapons and go fight it? Like, am I the only one that would just feel like, yeah, I'm content. I'll sit here and just, you're just doing that the whole time while they're just firing at you, just batting away, instead of you getting the equipment you need to go out and deal with the problem. Versus,
some people get their joy from realizing how cost efficient they're being compared to you.
Right, but that's the thing is like that is a valid tactic to do, but it's to a point of, but that's not like enjoyable. I'd rather watch someone go out, try to kill a tank trying to attack their bunker base, versus the guy that's in the bunker base screaming at people to, hey guys, come join me, get the BMATs and just smack away. And it's like, I don't know, that's just my own personal gripe on that issue, is like, be retroactive instead of I don't even think I got the terminology correct on that.
I do remember that. I think it was probably KFC who's like said something to the effect, like, you know, when people pointed out that the repair meta is like driving everybody crazy. I think I'm almost certain he said they don't like it either, or something like that. But
yeah,
it's like, it's hard to take serious considering there was a lot of cases where, you know, he said stuff like that and then nothing happened.
That's just something to
I think
placate
that was
us.
actually Mark. I think actually Mark, he said himself that it was a feature they like to, like they actually like to have, or to keep it on. Like that was a statement on regarding repairing.
Yeah,
like,
but keeping is, I mean, you can keep it without being oppressive, right? You can, you know,
Yeah.
if you really want to repair, like, there would be no issue with repairing shit if the repairing factor would be reduced by like half or some shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to hammer 4 times to get 1%. That would be like, yeah, you know, like, I don't really, yeah, you guys can repair. I don't think this is gonna help you guys a lot, but sure. If it would be like 50% as effective as it is right now, I think that would be, you know what I mean? Like, as long as it couldn't stop people from pushing just because they're there, like, just hammering like rodents, I wouldn't have a problem with them repairing. Quite the contrary, this could probably help you, because instead of actively doing something to stop you, they would just waste time on, you know, trying to get a few percentages back up, right? That's just me.
I mean, yeah, it's 100% with you. The only other thing, like in the space that I really, it's technically under the new ARTI system, but we've got a case where a tool has been nerfed into the ground again arbitrarily and is completely unusable. And I want to pay tribute to our glorious friend and savior, the mortar, who has departed this world, never to be seen again.
I'll
That
admit,
is
I didn't test
useless.
it out. I didn't test it out properly, but I do believe, I do believe you when you say it. It sounds like with a 40% like nerf, it sounds like other
50%
than
damage nerf.
yeah. That's,
So it's definitely a weird tackle they did on the mortar because I've used the mortar and it seems like they've also touched the accuracy. Well, I know we tested it again, Razor, on that test time that one time ago, but it feels like they've made it like 50% more inaccurate. Like you'll be wasting like a good couple of shells just to realize where the gun is actually at.
Yeah. I am not an arty guy, so let me qualify this by saying this, but I wasted a full squad of my guys' time for like 30 minutes trying to test it with like 4-5 mortar tubes, trying to snipe a 1x1 rifle garrison. We didn't get it. It wasn't even being defended, and we didn't get it.
I think it's just comparing from the mortar what it used to be and to factor what it is now is a smaller packet in like area denial for infantry. Like it's a more suppression based versus what it used to be. But there's still shrapnel shells too, correct?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure there still are shrapnel shells.
Okay.
It kind of just
Well,
makes
the standard
no sense.
shells,
Yes,
can't hit
standard
infantry.
shells are that.
But
you're not hitting infantry with standard shells.
But Dark, in my opinion, the airburst shells are gonna make the shrapnel shells in like. And it's a discussion because we don't know if there's two ways right now, right? Either the airburst shells are gonna fucking be the bane of every colonial, and we're gonna be having non-stop Reddit posts about how they need to be nerfed, or they're gonna be underwhelming and basically you're not going to probably be able to use it. I don't see them nailing the balance on that thing. Because there's like...
It's going to be hard.
There's only two options I see here. They're either going to rain from the sky and everything is going to die, which is going to be totally oppressive to them, because while that is happening, they cannot do anything. They cannot repair, they cannot defend, which it gives us time to just like push them and just take down their defenses and shit. Or they'll just like come down from the sky and not much will happen. In the same idea how the mortar shrapnel shell, if you guys remember, didn't really do much considering it would hit right next to the guy, but because of elevation and other bullshit, the guy would be like perfectly fine. He would wave back at you. You could see him from the binos, you know.
But that's the thing, though, is they need to go to the drawing board and see what the mortar should be doing and how it should be performing. Because we're so used to all artillery or all indirect fire equipment was anti-structure, or like a main damage dealing thing that can fire accurately and safely towards a structure. That's how it's always been for the past 3 years. Now they rewrote the book for it, but the mortar, is having an even rougher time to adjust with this whole change. But it goes back to the bottom line: is what is it supposed to be good at now, and what is that? And
it's unplayably bad, and the spread on it from the wind adjusts 20 meters just like it was firing from like a Howie, and it just and so the normal spread plus the wind spread and the damage output from it. So again, I'm content to say you can't use it against structures anymore. Fine, but you can't use it against infantry either. Like the blast radius on it isn't capable enough to do anything to ever random infantry. Like you'd have to be shooting at the unluckiest man alive to kill somebody.
I think there is a specific opportunity here that they're gonna probably be missed, but I'll still point it out, where you could have the mortar with this reduced damage and whatnot, but have this fucking function for it where it suppresses the enemy building instantly. So if you're mortaring it, it will not fire back. It will not allow people to fire back. And if you ask me, it should also not be repairable, right? Or you could make it so it's less repairable. Like I said, like if somebody's trying to repair something that is getting actively mortared,
right?
It's the repair rate is slowed down a lot, right? And then I would say then you'd have a reason to use them. I would fucking
If you
be,
can hit it, yeah.
Yeah, but like still, guys, I'm confident we can make them hit if you know you gain such an advantage, right? The advantage of
Right.
basically saying, if we keep mortar fire on this thing, they can't use the bullshit Amish strategy against it. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. They're gonna miss that, but I appreciate that.
I know. I just say.
Yeah.
Like, so with a lot of the arty stuff, what I really like all indirect needs just a general, maybe like a few meter AOE. Like when the stings impact, the AOE for a lot of the elements needs to be increased a bit, and because a lot of it is like, how do I say, like because the 120 and the 150 have the same blast radius. There's no difference. The only difference is the 150 hits harder, and it's like
Yeah,
certain elements should have more. Like a lot of the arty, it doesn't have the AoE for it to really be as effective as it should be.
and for the mortar, like sorry, Doug, but I'm just saying for the mortar, if you nerf the damage to such a high degree, why not expand the AOE then? Especially against infantry and such, if you want to use the shrapnel and whatnot. Not to a point where it becomes like OP, because like again, especially when we're talking shrapnel mortar shells, I'm thinking more of a bleeding effect, if you ask me, right? Where like I'll just give you an example. If the enemy soldier is like on the 2 meter point of where the shell drops, then it's a kill because you get basically a projectile lands on it. But then all the way to 5 meters or like 6 meters, 7 meters, there's like a bleed effect. Don't kill them, just fucking bleed them, right? And then there's a point to using that mortar, right? Because it's like actively doing something against that enemy infantry, and it's worth taking the effort to try and aim it, like Kaz was saying, right? I don't know, this is just me. I just like, I would try, if you're gonna make something niche, at least make it good at that niche thing without making it OP, which is the big challenge here, right? It's simple to just make something OP and then everybody loves it, right? Instantly.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to go back to the drawing board to see, okay, what should we do for the mortar in general? Because I'm in favor of just having them just retire the shrapnel round and morph the standard round to just be completely dedicated to just be anti-infantry, and that's just like to me right now the shrapnel and the normal round are pretty much identically the same. Like I feel like there's like they both could do the same role because the main standard shell was just nerfed to be nerfed on its damage capability. So what does that mean? It's going to be better at essentially killing infantry more versus of it, like you can't use it for structures. So what do you use the shell for? Well, hopefully you can hit some poor unlucky guy firing of one of the shells, and then the standing shell needs to have a little buff on what it needs to be performing good at, and it's supposed to be excelling at, because I'd be fine for a more, I'd say its inaccuracy is a little rough. It should be, given a little bit of love, but it needs to be, if it hits somewhere, you need to be like, oh shit, we're under mortar fire. You should be worried about being under mortar fire.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Hopefully it's not gonna turn into a shotgun situation, but it might turn into a shotgun situation. So I think that's the thing we should be expecting. Any other thoughts, Dark?
Probably my last things is I feel like they need to. I think the direct impact on artillery's firepower, or just maybe just trying to give the 150 some more, like some more of a threat level, is they need to have some, like, if a shell lands right on top of a tank, it should not kill it, but it should at least hit it and do something on it, because the odds of you getting hit directly by an artillery gun right now, it's exactly how I envisioned it. It's just like you as a tanker would be like, huh, it's not a good zone to be in. There's artillery firing on it. But you know what? Even if it hits us, I'm not worried because it's not going to do anything. If an artillery ever lands, like in World War II, if you were unfortunate to have an artillery shell hit the top of your tank, there would be nothing left of you.
Yeah,
If you're in
at least a
Tiger
cool
2
shot.
or
Go ahead.
I just said it doesn't matter if you're in a Tiger 2 or a Tiger 1. You know, if an artillery shell hits your tank, you're pretty much done for.
And that's the thing is like, give the 150 if it hits. I'm not saying it should destroy it instantly, but it should be a penetrating hit towards the HP and not a minuscule like a 2% hit. It should be something like a good a reasonably balanced hit when you would think about getting hit from artillery gun, because artillery shouldn't just be only infantry should be worried about it. It should be everyone around you should be worried about this to make it a bigger threat to we need to deal with this artillery.
You think there should be AT shells now? Or
No, I think that's physically impossible. If they do that, if they make AT shells, they would be very dumb to do that, because it's like, again, you'd be lucky to hit something with just the standard shell. And just imagining like trying to think about getting a precise hit with an AT shell, I feel like that's just a waste of.
what I'd love them to do is do sort of like how would I describe it? Like a bunker buster shell where you could fire it and it doesn't do a lot of structure damage, but like let's say you're up against a front line with a bunch of not rifle garrisons, but you know the bunkers that they can make with riflemen, you know, pointing their guns out and stuff like that. Maybe it's only for the 120 mil early game where you can fire a shell and it'll like bore through the roof and explode inside and clear out all the infantry. That would be sick as fuck.
There was, I forgot what the name of it was, the timed artillery shell, where you fire the shell, it lands on the ground, and a timer for like 5
That would be
seconds.
cool. Yeah, that would be super cool. Like if you could set the fuse on the artillery shell, that would be like another layer of the onion for artillery. That would be sick.
I just think like, especially on the tank versus RT shell thing, Dark, even like a crew shock sort of a thing, right? Where if the shell is really closer on target of the tank, just have the tank immobilized for a few seconds, because you know the crew is just basically shocked by the impact, sort of a thing. I would be down with that. I think that would be an interesting aspect. And another thing I've always personally considered, and I don't understand it, is, you know, those shots from RT when it's like dead on the building, on the structure. I think there should be some sort of critical hit on that. If you get what I'm saying, I don't mean just fucking, you know, snap, it's gone. No. I just mean, instead of whatever 1% or 0.1% or whatever fucking damage they do, that hit should do double, or you know what I mean, like.
Right. And that's how everything, when I initially wrote the whole artillery work, was relying on. Those were the core things. If something hit dead on impact, what is the most of that damage? But you know, of course, it should, when it spreads into the AOE, the damage would, you know, of course, negate off from it. But that's the thing, is they have everything where it lands. There's a core damage value there is, and then there's a splash. Because where I did it, I called it a kill zone, mainly focused for infantry, where if an artillery shell lands, there's like a set meter kill zone of, if you were unfortunately near that kill zone, sorry buddy, you're going dead. But if you're past that threshold, you would survive it. And a lot of it was, you know, based in off of giving a little more of a generous AoE spread for artillery. And it's just, right now it's like you have a pretty small AoE zone with a massive inaccurate shot, when even if you do land a shot, it's not enough to, it's not worth the value of when it, like, you know, when it hits something.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Are we good to go to the last thing, I think, for today?
Let's just hop over that, man.
Yeah. Right. So, well, we already sort of discussed game pop a bit, I would say, when we looked at the wars, if not. I think scalability is a thing to take into account here.
There's a couple of things. I mean, we all obviously understand that if the game is built to have certain amount of players on each map, then there needs to be some kind of mechanic to manage that. Yeah, we're all aware that queues need to be a thing, and I would have liked them to have at least considered the possibility beforehand that this type of thing could happen. You know what I mean? Because we've had a long time now where we've been waiting for an update to truly bring in the numbers like this. You know what I mean? And this is just a taste, by the way. That like the next update is going to be even worse, and the one after that is going to be even worse. I mean, it's in. Obviously I say worse, but it's obviously great for the community to have such an influx of new players that are so willing to learn about the game. I can't really ask for more with the group of players that we've got this time around, because pretty much most of them seem to be decent people that just want to learn the game and really interested in playing it. And with everything that goes with that, with the population, the game obviously being a lot more fun to play at the moment because of the population and things like that. I just think that they should have really looked at the possibility of putting up a second war, before, instead of doing it last minute when things got out of hand, sort of thing. I think in the future of Foxhole, the way that they could make it so they're going to run into big issues when they start having 2, 3, 4 wars on the go at the same time. The magic behind Foxhole, or a big part of the magic behind Foxhole, is the fact that everybody's in the same war and things happen within that war that become like, I don't want to say drama, but like Mimi, like things happen in the community, certain things happen in the war, people have crack about that, or people, have banter about that. And that is, part of the magic of Foxhole, everybody being part of the same story. So if you start dividing the community up into several different wars, that could be a big problem. I think the way forward for this type of thing is to not necessarily increase the map size of what we've got. Yeah. But what they should maybe do is do different theaters around the world in which Foxhole is situated. So, we've got the Seven front at the moment, which is a lot like the Eastern Front in our own history. But then, in the future, I think that maybe releasing maps that aren't, hexagons of, I don't know, 12 maps, but maybe they're just a 9 thingy map, or maybe they're just a 4 hex map, with 4 different maps on the actual game war map. And those could be, I suppose they could be the theaters. So, for instance, if the Colonials win that particular theater, it all contributes towards the end war. I don't know how it would work, but something along those lines, where you could have one call them a sub war that's maybe set in the desert, so LL Main sort of aesthetic, and then you could have another one that's set in like Asian climate, like War in the Pacific sort of vibes and stuff like that. I think that if you just release carbon, I mean, obviously at the moment that's what they're going to have to do because they don't have these maps on standby. But in the future, and I think after the game's been out, this is definitely something to come after 1.0. But I think in the future that they really need to think about introducing more like war maps. And I'm not just talking about like individual maps. I'm talking about fully functional, maybe smaller scale war maps. And I think that could really work, definitely in different biomes and stuff like that. And that could really, really help with player population.
Yeah, I really like the idea. I think basically what you're proposing is sort of a bigger scale skirmish, which sounds like exactly the way to go.
Kind of. Yeah.
Because like,
Kind of.
especially if you add an impact on the main game to it, sort of as we added with the skirmishes. So let's say, you can even make it themed, right? Where if you win the desert one, maybe your team gets a supply of tanks, right? Sort of what I mean? Like the tank battalion comes over from those maps to support the main push, right? Or if you win a more insular one, you get some like water vehicles or whatever, right? Sort of that would be really cool in my opinion, right? To get some sort of bonus from that. Even if I may just like be like propose something like, so let's take the example of because if you remember on Reaching Trail, the backstory to that was some paratroopers land there from the colonial side and then trying to cut off logistics and whatnot. I think an interesting mechanic would be if you'd have like a fight on the maps behind Reaching Trails, for example, and then if the colonials would win that engagement, they could have a small foothold in Reaching Trails, sort of a thing, as a fucking prize or some shit like that.
I get what you're saying.
Rewards, sort of a thing, right? So there would be so many mechanics to like let them influence the actual war while also keep relevant, and the population would be like, yeah, I'm not in the main war, but what I do here actually contributes to it either way, right?
Yeah. So it would feel more like a world war than rather than just sort of like a war between two nations, wouldn't it? And I think that would be pretty cool. And you could even do things like, so let's just say, for instance, on the LLMA map, maybe there's, I don't know, I'm just going to come up with something off the top of my head. Maybe it's not Wardens and Colonials, maybe it's Wardens versus the Honor-Bound tribe, which in the Honor-Bound tribe have ties to the Colonials, so maybe they have a different uniform, and that's who the Colonials play on that particular map, but it introduces more lore into the game and things like that. So on that particular map, the Colonial side uses different models. Maybe they're, kitted out as, Ottoman Empire, esque sort of things. And then on the Pacific map, that Asian aesthetic, maybe there's Japanese or Chinese influenced faction that maybe they're allied with the Wardens, and on that particular map, it's the Wardens have that uniform or whatever, and I think that would be that type of thing. That would really take Foxhole to the next level. That would be so fucking good. So then it wouldn't be persistent warfare; it'd be persistent world warfare, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think that's an incredible take on it. Hopefully, they get some inspiration from it. I would love to see something like that in the game, long term, of course. Dark, you have anything on this? Because I know we've been through it a lot of times, so I'm not gonna insist too much on it.
Yeah, no, we've already talked about it, so we're good.
We could look really quick at because we already have the starting condition for tomorrow, so we could comment out a short bit if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Just have
I
a
like
big
one word for it. Word, just boring.
I haven't seen what it looks like. Do you want to put it up?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'll put it up on stream here. You can have a look see. I think actually I think you can see it. Yeah, I was about to say it looks like the colonial tech is a bit covered by the chat, but I think overall it should be okay.
Seems pretty standard.
Is it the same one as last time? Feels exactly the same. Feels like there's no difference.
I don't
feel.
It feels
no.
generic.
It was in the past, but it's not the same. Like look at Fisherman's Row. Partisan Island is Warden. The tech. Okay.
Not the starting position. Maybe I should have probably looked a little more on that, but I was just focused on the tech.
I don't think the tech is exactly the same either. There seems to be a small small difference to it, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I just like I do have my own issues with this. I understand that the Warden Partisan Island there is blue just because they want more people. So there's like people spawning into fishermen's. But I think I never understand the sense of this, where the wardens are caught off in Fisherman's Row. Like, what exactly should happen there with those? I don't know. It just feels dumb.
It's because of that shard on underneath Orbreaker Isles in the top of Fisherman's. They made it so wide that it looks like, you get me, like what they should have done is either cut that piece a bit and add like a warden spot right there on that part of the island that connects from Fisherman's. But they just made that so big and wide that it looks like.
If I would be new to the game and I would see that, I would never spawn in Fisherman's, because I'd be like, what's the point of that, right? Like, how are we gonna get lodging there and whatever? But yeah, I really don't like this map configuration. I also feel like it's a bit bullshit, because on Farnak, on Jade, it's always easier for the colonials to get there, especially with that Husk Hollow gain, which makes no sense to me. Never has been. What's the point of, like, I don't know, it just feels weird.
They start with Husk Hollow.
Yeah, they have Husk Hollow, which never makes sense to me. Well, never makes sense to me. Very stupid. Then Lockmore is always like, Wardens have no chance there either. There's no way Wardens are gonna get, to Lockmore first. There's no fucking way. What else? Deadlands, always easier for the colonials when it's split like that from the south, whatever. Marble Hollow is easier for the Wardens. We did have colonials contesting it pretty well, but I would call Wardens pretty easy there. And Endless Shore, even though it's easier for the Wardens because of the bridges, that is a nightmare to secure. Like, it takes days, if not a week, to fucking get Saltbrook in good shape. It's fucking hell.
They have Woolchurch, that's another thing though.
Again, yeah, that the same thing as before. Get Woolchurch, that's extremely weird. I don't know. I understand.
So
go ahead.
Is Allbreaker, Fisherman's, Tempest, and Godcrafts open?
Yeah, everything's open.
Everything's open. Okay.
They do like an Alamo stand where one faction is in the dead center having.
I've said it before, man. Like, just stick 82 DK in like abandoned mode and just see how long we can hold out against both factions. That's funny as fuck.
Okay.
You would see unity and coexistence from both colonials and wardens. Like, okay, once we take the 82nd down, then we'll be back.
I just feel like this particular map start is really bad. I really don't like it at all. It makes no sense from a lot of points when you look at it from all over the map. Like, it's just like weird to me, and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
If they were gonna do this, why wouldn't they just think about just flipping it? Let the Wardens be down in the south and let the colonials be up top. It's just like,
I wouldn't mind that for one more.
Like the layout is, I don't know. I feel like they can take not risks, but like have some fun with it. You know what I mean? Like,
but the lure.
Ugh.
Anyhow, I don't know. I don't even like. I don't like this. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, it's like, and the white stuff is, the stuff that it's always the same. Just fucking recycle it now and then.
What is the point in Lockmore being neutral? Like, what? Like, it's just an inconvenience for them, really, to drive over there. I mean, there's absolutely no chance of us coming anywhere near grabbing Lockmore before them.
It's annoying for them because they can't really build their garrison houses and shit. Like, I guess that's it.
It's just whoever Lockmore has, it's just gonna be urban combat until.
Not really, mate, because like they take the town and then you're at the bridges, whatever happens. And it's way easier to put pressure on our relic base there once Lockmore is up and running. Like, goes back to the bridge and ends in a stalemate at Mercy's Wish for like 2 weeks. That's basically the what happens with Lockmore in this configuration all the time. You know, I can give you the rundown for all of them, honestly. You know, Partisan Island.
You literally just accurately just described what happens every war when we get Lockmore.
Because the problem I have with this, like the devs are trying to pretend that, you know, they're changing stuff around, they're keeping it fresh. No, like that. This is not how you change stuff around and keep it fresh. This is extremely like predictable. I can tell you what happens 9 out of 10 times on all of these fronts on this map configuration, and it's quite boring, to be honest, looking at like this for people that have been playing this over and over again for a long time. I do, you know, I will admit, you know, for new players maybe it's, you know, exciting or whatever.
I wish that I hadn't found this game. Like, I mean, obviously there would be a lot of things that went along with that. Like, I would never have met a lot of people and things like that. But from a purely someone who enjoys playing Foxhole point of view, like, I wish I'd never picked up Foxhole until like right now, because if you got to appreciate from a new player's point of view, like Foxhole must be fucking awesome. You know what I mean? Because like they've never experienced the changes that we've experienced. So coming into Foxhole right now, I think a lot of people will find the game absolutely amazing and know like very little fault in it apart from like lag and queues and shit. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, you can't overlook that fact. People like us, we've been playing the game for fucking years, so we've seen these map configurations a million times, but new people are like, it is fresh for them, you know?
Yeah, well, just to like wash out the aftertaste of this map, I propose I show you guys a very underrated ad we made for DK at some point. I just loved it, and I told Dark I wanted to add it to the stream just so we can run it now and again, just for fun reasons and because I love it and it's so underrated. So before we get ready to do our outro, I'm just gonna pop that real quick, and then after that we'll get ready to outro out of here. It's just 1 minute, so don't be scared. It's just gonna be.
Shall we say bye now then?
Oh no, I was thinking we can watch it and then pop in to say our goodbyes.
Yeah. All right.
This Vox podcast is marked Alpha Priorus.
Blood, agony, loss. Our hatred was forged on the battlefield. Our faith is ironclad in its resolution. We are the 82nd Death Corps, bringing only righteous slaughter in the wake of our faithless advance. If you are a brother or sister of the Warden Empire, or if you have seen the light of Callahan and wish to defect, this is your chance of redemption in the eyes of the God Emperor. The heretic knows no end, and we shall see no end to their slaughter. In the name of Callahan, the God Emperor of man, become legion and fear no more. Join the 82nd Death Corps.
Right, well, I had fears that you were going to play
Why?
190 Exterminatus.
Oh, that's the next one.
No.
Next one.
That's a
good one though. I like that one.
We'll say
cringe.
No, it's not cringe. Stop fucking being like a schoolgirl. Come on, it's really fun, and I'll keep it after we do our outro. It's the cherry on top. I'm keeping it. So a bit of background on this one. Commissar Jimbo, I remember he worked with Avitus a lot on this one, right? He did the voice effects and whatnot. I think it's a really good one.
Dude, if you think I can remember that far back, like...
I can, don't I?
I can't remember shit. I can't remember doing that.
I felt like it's so. We made it for Press Corps so they can run it on their ad segment.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. But when you realize that it's yourself, it's like that.
I do the same thing whenever I hear my voice. It's like, oh fuck, that's what I sound like. It's like I'm just realizing like everyone has been accustomed to that voice. I'm just like, oh god, I'm so sorry. I mean, I wish I could sound different.
If I had a voice of Morgan Freeman, then I could take credit. But
Yeah, we're just non-interesting voice people where we don't like the sound of our own selves. We just cringe and
Okay. Enough whining. Keep it going. Let's close it up here. We've been keeping these people glued to their chairs for enough time.
yeah, I've been wanting to do some Buro trauma, but
Not to get on stream.
well, I mean, I've already done it. But anyways, before closing remarks, got nothing else to say. I'm just ready to go. I'm tired.
Overall, I have to say the new update has not been as bad as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, big rooms for improvement in a lot of areas, and certain shit is bullshit along the way, but overall, not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and there are some gems in there. So, 4 out of 10 would return. See you soon.
As long as they keep that weather away from us, I'm pretty much good. We can keep the ball rolling.
If I was a new player, I'd maybe give it like an 8.5, but I'm a salty vet, so I mean 4 is like a 10 from me. So
right, cut that like expectations down to a half. Right, guys. I guess I'm gonna call it here. I will play that ad Avitus doesn't want to play as we go out here because it's insanely good. It is a small ad we made for our swag store, which is actually still up. If you're interested in like merch and shit like that, we did it with the help of Saffron. Some of you might remember him. And I just wanted to mention like that's basically our way to like try and give back to him for like making all the crazy good art you see around DK is made by him, and he didn't ask for one dime at any point. Like the logo, the banners, all of the cool stuff you see with A2DK on it that we put on our Discords and on our Discord and so on is from him. There's a lot of stuff you can also see on the store there. And the idea is a small percentage of the price there goes to Saf as a thank you for like basically making art that would cost us thousands of dollars, honestly, for free, basically, in case you like anything. Other than that, yeah, we'll try and do this more often, God willing, and in real life allowing us to do it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Really appreciate you guys sticking around with us.
Yep, this has been a long one. You guys have a good one.
Are you sick of wearing those muddy old clothes? Want to show your devotion to the Emperor for all to see? Well, look no further, my fellow guardsmen. For just a lifetime of servitude fighting vile heresy, you can own one of these high-quality t-shirts. Never have a commissar question your loyalty again? Call 190-EXTERMINATORS. That's 190-EXTERMINATORS for further details.
Thank you.